I was doing the reverse, what currently the industry doing. End of 2015, I was in US, but here as a platform engineer, you get it right at your face. With respect to OLA, make it queryable when user clicks or he expects a response back like right then and there. Always try to take the road which is less traveled.
Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast, and today we have a guest with us who is an expert in tech. He is Mani, Director of Platform Engineering at OLA. He has vast experience. He has been a student in India, a student in US. He has worked in US and he is currently working in India. So we are going to learn a lot from his experiences. So stay tuned and let's begin the podcast. Hi Mani, so my first question to you is, tell us about yourself, like your background, your studies, your work experience, how it started, how did you pick the degree, BTech degree, and then the work experience and all.
Definitely. Once again, thanks for having me, Sandeep Jain. I'm a big fan of your work and whatever which you have brought into the industry, right, in terms of serving the entire student community and as well as people like me who are an experienced professional. We still go back to learn the basics and refresh our memory from time to time. And once again, thanks a lot for what you have done. Okay, let me step back and probably walk over my entire journey. I'll probably start it off with as a student. So I'm a boy from Chennai, typical middle class family, and then I did my undergraduation in one of the university colleges, RMK University, and then I did my BE till from 2003 to 2007, and in 2008 I went to US to do my masters. I did my MS in US from Wright State University, which is in Dayton, Ohio. And when I was a student, probably for student crowd who are out there, I did both part-time and as well as full-time. I mean, both on campus and off campus as part of my part-time. So at that point in time, my estimated cost for doing a master's was like 40 lakhs, like 20 lakhs on as a tuition fee and 20 lakhs on cost of living. I mean, typical renting and staying in food and whatnot. I managed to do it in 10 lakhs. The reason behind it is, the first job which I did as an on-campus was being a web developer. I mean, I was supposed to maintain this Ratsoin or the MBA site for Wright State University. They have a separate site, and obviously they were looking for someone who can who has a little bit of expertise with the web development and as well as hosting. So that actually started my career. And my second job, I mean, I was able to do it when I was a student, and then slowly as an intern, I joined this GE Aviation. So Dayton and Cincinnati is what, 1.5 hours drive, maybe 2 hours tops. So from time to time, we used to go to the aviation office. That's when I came to know how the enterprise is working and the volume of data which we are crunching. And I mean, as a developer, you will try to test it in like say a few components here. You're trying to develop the other component. You try to make the integration work. Say, for example, if you're building a typical 3-tier application, we'll do all of it. But at scale, how it's being done and how we will be able to develop this reliable, scalable piece of software and which gets deployed in like massive servers. So that was the very first exposure, and it was an eye-opener. And
you did that, you got that exposure while you were studying, right? As
almost end of it during my last quarter of my master's. And then, I completed it. Then I was doing contracting for a brief amount of time. So till then, I was in East Coast. Okay. So in Dayton, Ohio region, East Coast. And then I did contracting. At that point in time, I worked for like Thomson Reuters. I worked for Aurora Donnelley, and then Intel for a brief amount of time. And then this was from say 2008 to 2010. I was in Ohio. And then I was traveling across from east to west, I mean, upstate New York till then Chicago. And then I was working even for a startup, Intel and as well as Intel Media at that point in time. And then working for a startup, which was eventually being acquired.
And how are the sorry to
go for it.
how are the placements in US? Basically, in India, there are companies that come and everybody wants to. I mean, most of the time in India, what happens is people go by the salary numbers. That this is the top paying company, so everybody will go for it. And then and companies also come this way. And campuses do not allow you a lot of times that if you got a job of 10 lakh rupees or certain limit, then you can't sit to another company because unless your peers are getting placed. So, are there similar rules in US universities or like?
Not really. I would say there are companies who come directly scout for, say, for example, the MITs and whatnot. The Googles and Netflix on Earth are going to scout directly. But when I did my masters at that point in time, it was not the case, and that too. It was like the recession was over, and slowly people were trying to get their job here and there, and so it was like as a student, right? I was like, I have a resume and I know my basic skills as a Java developer and as a web developer, and I was like scouting everywhere. So there you can actually, I mean, by those 2 years, right? When I was doing masters, it taught me a lot in terms of how to hold myself. I mean, learn on the fly or on the job. That was a major thing. I mean, because you did web development to a certain extent, and then enterprise to a certain extent, and then on the job is basically where you try to learn like multiple things, because it was like I mean, anyone can relate it from being switched from a college kid to directly working in an enterprise at a scale. That was a different land or a different ball game altogether, I would say. Again, going back to the story. So then I was working in, say, Thomson Reuters. That problem statement was very huge. I mean, it was very different. I was a software developer and I have a senior, and we have been asked to crack this black box. I will just try to address what black box is all about and what is the problem statement. So we are talking about all this data as a new oil, right? Thomson Reuters used to make money, or they are still making money using the data. So they have data flowing through from different mats, from different vendors, say AT&T or telephone bill, AT&T or T-Mobile bills, or electricity, drivers, ticketing, whatnot. All those data gets crunched and it gets weighted, and then they're going to build a product. They have this huge mapping of all the folks who are in US. They're going to give weightage for, or say for example, if I have like 4 different addresses, and of course a person will eventually move here and there, and we're going to give weightage based on the data which we got recently, and so this black box is the one which will decide the weights for, and it's going to also normalize the data for you, and it's going to get stored. And at that point in time, whatever the team which have developed this, because this was an age system, so no one was there who were the original engineers who end up developing. So, and it was also not documented well in terms of how to crack it, how to rebuild, how to change the weights and whatnot. Because that point in time, it was all monolith app, right? It was not dissected and kept in microservices, or where the config has been yanked out and kept. So
I have a quick question for you here. So there are pros and cons of building monolithic versus API. So if you have a monolithic system, you will get this advantage where all data is in one database. So you can quickly do joins, right? And you can actually do a lot of local optimizations. You can actually build indexing over the different tables. I'm just asking a basic question, somebody who's building the databases. And once you get a microservices done, right, then you have microservices that definitely make your system better. There are different teams who can manage different things, but at the same time you get some disadvantages. For every request that is coming, you are sending requests to multiple other servers. There is network load.
So Service A has to talk with Service B with the minimum latency, round trip, all the drama.
Right, all the drama, and a lot of networking, a lot of DevOps involved. Now, how do you decide, like, should I keep it monolithic or should I keep it in some sort of microservices?
Yeah, it's on the the developer mindset, and as well as the culture or the forecast or the roadmap which you have. I would rather put it in that way. Say, for example, when you're developing something, just make sure the product which you are putting it in the table has to be scaled, or at the worst case, no one should be touching or tweaking it for the next 3 to 5 years at the bare minimum. So that's the ideology which we have to go with it. So that is the reason why you will find, because building a microservice also, as you said, rightly pointed out, there are lots of cons also which comes along with it. There is definitely a learning curve for the dev who ends up doing it, and on top of it,
from a management, the cost of the company also, because there are cross-team communication that happens, and there are individual teams that build up and they're doing their work, then they're cross-team involved and all.
Yes, precisely. It comes with a cost. I'm not denying that fact, because if you have a monolith, you can probably say, for example, if you are in fintech, you are supposed to deploy it in multiple regions as a say compliance like BCBDR. But being said so, it's a wise decision. I would say a balanced decision, both from a TCO-RI standpoint and of course the cost which you're putting at it at an early stage. But if you are an established enterprise, all that also has to be baked in with respect to the timeline, roadmap, and whatnot. So it's a collective decision, I would say.
So let's go back to your journey, right?
Oh, sure. So with that being said, so that was the complex problem, and myself and my senior engineer, we were able to crack it in terms of, so that was fascinating. At that point in time, still I was a relevant Java engineer and whatnot. And then, and eventually once we baked it, right, we managed to crack it, and we were like, okay, this has to be deployed and tested and whatnot. And that's when I was like slowly migrated myself into a build and release engineer without me knowing it completely what I'm getting into, which happened for a good reason.
So the company decided to move you in that, or you decided that I want to?
There was no one. Someone, either me or my senior, someone has to pick it up.
Okay.
I was like, okay, let me do it. It's fine. There is one other tool which I have to learn, which is a typical form file, writing a form file, Maven file, or fine tuning it. Actually have to put it in dev and stage and get it deployed, give a thumbs up, and then we pass it on to the operations team.
Right.
So at that point in time, the operations team and the dev team was like two separate teams. There was no concept of,
and that is how software development was during those days, right?
Exactly. The dev guy has to make it work. I mean, you bake it, you give me an executable, I'll put it in my bunch of servers. At that point in time, it was JBoss servers. I'll put it in my JBoss servers and I will run the show. You just tell me how to do it. You check in the code. So that's when I slowly drifted towards the build and release engineering, which eventually helped me at scale at a later point in my career. So that was one of my stint with Thomson Reuters, which I still cherish.
And that turned into a platform engineer later.
Exactly. That turned into a platform engineering. So till that time, it was operations. And then I was doing multiple contracting around eastern central part of US. Then I moved to the West. So I was working for a startup in US. It was being acquired by Aviation Web Loyalty. But at that point in time, I was doing the reverse, what currently the industry doing. What it means is one of the biggest tasks which was given me was to migrate the workload, both stateless, stateful, the WAF solution, the firewall, whatnot. Everything from on-prem. They used to have a colo. They have, say, 20 crores, 40 site. They have racked up their servers. So all that traffic gets served from this building or this colo. So we have to migrate this, decommission the entire colo, and as well as migrate the workload from colo to AWS. Because at that point in time, in 2012-13, it was catching up in full swing. It was like, okay, everyone was moving it to the cloud. It was the best thing to do.
Every company went through that cycle, moving things to AWS or GCP or Azure.
Exactly. And now we are doing the other way around in terms of where we are like, okay, it's costing us heavy. You know what? Some part of the workload, the predictable workload, we are moving it into our own colo or into our own private cloud. So that was the industry thing. So till 2015, end of 2015, I was in US. So this was one of the major projects which I worked on in terms of migrating our workload from colo into AWS or public cloud rather. So by the time I worked in AWS, GCP, Azure, or at a reasonable extent. Of course, I also started off with AWS. Moving on. So till then, the DevOps thing caught up pretty well. Like DevOps, so operations team have grown into DevOps. And then I moved back home. So I was.
And what triggered you to move back to India?
For family reasons. That time my dad wasn't doing great, so I was like, okay, I'll stay close to him. So to my family, so I moved.
And wasn't there social pressure like in US you have higher growth chances? People want to go to US, but you came from US to India at that time.
It was a conscious decision, and I wouldn't say. I mean, I still lead a comfortable life. I mean, there are a lot of people who moved back. To be frank, from US to, because they also have a right mix of. I mean, this adaptability part, right? Because as a kid, you got black and blue from every part of the corner, and then that molded you and shaped you for a good reason. So it's about the adaptability, and people do talk. I mean, I was very reluctant in terms of about the culture and whatnot, how it's going to play out for me and my family. But on a whole, it played very well, I would say. So I moved to a company named FireEye Cybersecurity as a staff SRE. So that time SRE was like in full blown out. SRE book was out from Google, and then all the things about observability was like everywhere. People are talking about it. So
that one decision that you took, initiative that you took, that I want to do that, you took the ownership. That worked, and actually that changed the industry, and you got this role, right?
Yes. So it moved from, say, typical operations to, say, dev to operations to DevOps to SRE. So at FireEye, so now it's been, FireEye got merged with Mandiant, and then it was being acquired by Trellix. So being said so, at that point in time, we used to manage this big Elasticsearch cluster. Say, for example, Target had an incident, right, in terms of where the customer's PII information was being leaked. So FireEye is a cybersecurity company, and we sell all these products like ETP, like email threat protection, endpoint threat protection, network protection, whatnot. So we've been tasked to do the actual triaging and debugging on it, and for that we are supposed to take all these logs, audit logs from the target service and dump it. So it was like full blown Elasticsearch cluster. That's one of the distributed system problem where we have to make sure the uptime of our own Elasticsearch cluster is all good. And on top of it, again, the observability part kicks in terms of where not just manage our own observability in terms of the typical APM events, logs, metrics, traces, but the customers' ones as well. Then I moved to in 2019. So I have like around 7-8 years of experience in this, and again 7-8 years in India too. So then I moved to Walmart. That was in 2019. I moved to traffic team. The typical front-end tech stack like CN, typical load balancers, F5 or WAF solution, and then API gateway and other load balancers. So that's the team which I was in. Then I moved to on the other side. So Walmart has this GTP thing, the typical platform team, global tech platform, and as well as the app team. So then I migrated as an SM on the app side, like for marketplace. So that's like you are supposed to go really, really deep at a particular problem statement. Say, for example, if you're handling a load balancer, you're supposed to go to the internals of it. Why we are supposed to write a Lua plugin in this way? Why not in the other way? What will be? Have I addressed all these edge cases and corner cases, whatnot? So, and then I was there for a 4.5 years solid.
In Walmart?
In Walmart. Okay. And then around a year back, I joined as a director in OLA for same platform engineering. So by the time, you would have seen how the operations team also has grown. So our operation team was like moved into DevOps, and then to Dev, SecOps to a certain extent, and then to typical SRE teams, and then into a full-blown platform team. So platform team is basically where you try to extract all the common problem statements and then serve it at scale to all different BUs. Say, so over here, I mean, it's pretty common. Like, say, for example, we have around 7 different teams under platform engineering, which includes, say, database as a service, and then the typical cloud infra team, then the tooling team, which so the cloud infra team will be managing the networking and the cloud infrastructure for it, whether it's hybrid or public cloud basis. And then we will have tooling team, which does the CI/CD part, and as well as the Kubernetes as a service or containerization as a service. Then the perf team. So that's on the infra side of it. And then we have a couple of, or 3 teams rather, in the data side. One is the typical data infra team, which does or provision the Hadoop infrastructure on a whole at scale. And then the data platform team, which typically does, say, for example, Hadoop jobs like Python or Spark, Presto jobs, which basically crunch all these volume of data, which is being coming from, say, different data marts like MySQL or Kafka, whatnot. And then you have the typical BI teams who happen to do the dashboarding out of it. So that's what made it is. So as you can see, the journey, operations
so
to
the
platform
whole journey. You've yourself seen the whole growth in the tech industry, the whole shift in the tech industry from an engineer doing everything to operations and DevOps and platform engineering. So awesome journey, and I think everybody in this podcast who's watching this is going to learn a lot from this journey, and we are going to cover a lot of questions for you.
Sure.
All right. So my next question to you is about, again, education in India versus in US. So I have a daughter, right? She's 14 years old, and I want her to try some work in corporate or maybe work in McDonald's or something, so that she gets some practical experience, how things work, how money is made, how industry works. But that thing is not looked up as a very good thing in India. I mean,
Agreed. Totally.
and if you look at US, you there most of these students do some jobs, right? When they're studying in the top universities. So what are your views on that thing? I mean, what do you say? You work there, so were you working in some company as a part-time?
Yes. I was doing both on campus and off campus. So remember, I was talking about I was needy. I mean, the overall budget for me doing masters for 2 years was like around 40 lakhs. And I was able to manage it with 10 lakhs, and rest of it I managed, I mean, remaining 30 lakhs, I was able to make it using my both on-campus and off-campus job at that point in time. It's not just about the money, it's about what value you get out of it. It's about learning the life. I mean, how things are being made and whatnot. There, it also, say, for example, in McDonald's, even if you work, right, or say roughly $10 per hour, it's a very good amount of money where you can pay towards your tuition fee. And the sentiment thing, which is very common with Indian parents also, right? It doesn't exist over there. What I mean is, so the very first time when I called my dad and mom, and I was like, I'm doing, and I'm able to manage my funds and my cost of living, and because it was relatively high, so I'm able to manage my living and whatnot. She will be, are you okay? Are you sure you will be able to manage? And the typical parent question kicks in, obviously, because every parent doesn't want their child to have that hard path, right? But yeah, it teaches a lot back in terms of how you make money. I mean, how different industry works. I mean, say, for example, if you put an engineer, think about it, like you put an engineer in a McDonald's, and he or she will be able to understand how the dynamics works, how the franchise works. I mean, how they're able to save. Fast food industry is like able to make money, how they were able to, because McDonald's or Walmart is not small, right? I mean, whoever is working over there, you might see it, but it will eventually, bring in a lot of life lessons at the very end. So it will certainly help. I would definitely recommend.
Right. I asked her to do some internships in GeeksforGeeks only, and I am asking her to probably try. first of all, I think law doesn't allow before 15, but once law allows it, I'll
Yeah.
check the law also, because my lawyer also told me that she can't do work at the below 15. But I think whatever law is, I'll follow the law, but I really want her to basically work and get some real. I'm telling her, don't go to school, to be very frank. School is not going to teach you much. You have that liberty. You can work at these ways. You will get much more experience. That's what people try after education. So try working in different teams, learn different how accounts works, how legal works, how dev team works, and whatever looks appealing at the end, try joining that thing. Maybe not in geeksforgeeks, maybe other company, but try learning actual industry experience, not some school education which is being taught to everybody. So I really like that the way people in US actually work when they are, and I really don't like this is being looked down in India. Actually, I want people to not child labor, not like not if
get it.
Right, but
But yeah, it also matters. I mean, if you take a step back and see, right, even if a student, say in IITN or whatnot, if he or she is putting in like 3 hours in the morning or 3 hours in the evening, or just a couple of hours in the morning and evening, and if you're trying out their say off-campus work or any sort of part-time work, it's not going to bring in a lot of value. So that also matters a lot. At the same, say, an engineer or a student who is able to put their heart and soul into some sort of problem statement, right, which is hard to crack. I mean, there is a lot. They're going to bring in a lot of value, not just for themselves, but for the entire society and the community. So that also goes hand in hand. So again, the delta is very, very huge over here in terms of, say, for example, if you're doing an IIT, it's what, 20-30 lakhs at least, or 50 lakhs for that matter. But what they're going to bring from doing a part-time job, it's very light. So it's not, we can't compare it hand in hand, but yeah, I'm talking about the intangible values which it brings in.
Right. So I mean, you can't exactly compare, but you need to decide according to where you stand right now and what is your role right now. So, Mani, my next question to you is, in tech, people generally face this challenge. I have a tech team, right? And I have worked as an engineer also. There are a lot of times when business wants to get things done quickly, that we want to get things done. We don't care about how well your system design is, how well your code written is, but we want to get it done on time. But the tech people, they want to implement in a perfect way. There are a lot of memes also where they share, when the management asks for a deadline, the design becomes like this. They share some pictures and a lot of memes go on LinkedIn. So how you maintain the balance? What should be the right approach to maintain the balance between business and tech requirements?
Sure. Maybe I will take a step back and I will talk about my own journey about it. So I was a pure tech person. I mean, I joined Walmart as a staff engineer. So I was like pure tech guy. And one part, when you rise up the ladder, right, you will eventually know, you know what, just tech won't work. So I happened to do my executive MBA. That opened up a lot of eyes, to be frank. So what it really means is, right, say for example, me being a director of platform engineering, I can't just look at my own problem statement in terms of, say for example, you know what, Kubernetes, it's one flashy thing, let's do, like tomorrow everyone works on it. It doesn't work that way. It's about the dev team and finance team and whatnot. Other stakeholders also come into play in terms of and leadership, right, to address the problem statement. So generally, you try to do all this ROI, TCO, all that math and cost, how long, timeline, all that, and the roadmap for any sort of initiative, right, which you're trying to put in. Everything has to be baked in. I mean, then you have to dissect that problem statement and give it to your team, and along with a reasonable timeline so that it can be materialized. I mean, more of a strategic approach. And of course, you have to keep informing your stakeholders. Whoever is actually looking for it, and always inform them. You know what? This is what is happening, and we are a little aggressive, and we should be able to complete it, or we are like slipping through the timeline, whatnot. So all your plan A, plan B, or whatnot has to be, at least from a paperwork or paper exercise standpoint has to be done, and you have to go with it. But yeah, I'm more of a person who does all of it in terms of especially see the ROI of it and cost of it, all the and the value creation which it's going to bring in. Because if the business or the problem statement which you're trying to address, right, if it doesn't demand the tech, it's of no use. So yeah.
So have you faced these challenges in the past? The tech team is saying, boss, we won't be able to deliver it, and the management is saying it's super urgent, get it done somehow, even if it is not very efficient. And so, what do you do as a manager? Do you tell your tech team we need to do it, or you tell your business team we need to wait for it?
It goes hand in hand. I mean, sometimes you give something and you get something, right. So it's always you want, say for example, you're trying to build something and you have hundreds and hundreds of features baked in, but with the timeline and the expectation, you know what, a trimmed down version of it can be delivered, whatever the agile methodology which we all follow these days, right, eventually gets addressed. But yeah, that part, it's like you slowly iterate over it.
All right.
And you also keep the iteration process is not just with the dev, it's about the communication and cascading the information to, you know what, this is where I'm at, and don't be surprised that what's not going to happen. So but yeah, there are instances where I mean, everyone would have been where we might have to tell the hard news, you know what, it's not happening. But at least from our and from the tech standpoint, people would have given their sweat and blood towards that timeline and problem. But yeah, there are instances.
I think that answers the question really well. So my next question is, you are director of platform engineering. You have been into platform engineering. So it is said that platform engineering people, their customers are the software developers, the dev team.
Obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
So for software developers, it's the business team. For the platform, it's their customers. So how it is different for you to be a platform engineer than from being a software developer, typical software developer?
Okay, so I mean, say for example, typical software developer, right? If you're developing something, you're exposing sort of it to the API. Until unless you directly see the customer using it and the value which is being created, that is one way of looking at it. I mean, you might get all those metrics via all these different platforms which provide stats, or probably a testimony from a customer and whatnot. But here, as a platform engineer, you get it right at your face.
Right.
You know what? Your CI/CD system is screwed up and it's been stuck for last 1 hour. I'm not able to deploy. You get it right on your face, like right there.
All right.
So it works both in good and bad ways. I mean, it's a challenge and as well as it's an opportunity, right? In terms of, you know what, it has to be reliable. This guy can't go down. And that's where all your 5 nines, 4 nines, 6 nines, everything comes into play.
To me, it looks like a better opportunity because you quickly get your feedback, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you quickly get to know what did you go wrong, where did you go right. So
Yes.
that's really a good thing. Now I'll have last few questions about Ola. So Ola has been a very hot topic in news everywhere because of their IPO recently in the EV segment. So what are the challenges you guys faced in building the tech for EV in EV segment particularly?
So with respect to Ola, it's not just about the dash. I mean, the end customer actually sees only the dashboard and the metrics out of which comes out of it. But there is a lot which goes, in the background in terms of where we are supposed to collect all these metrics and then process it, store it, and make it queryable. And on top of it, the latency which is associated with it also has to be very minimal, right? Because when user clicks or he expects a response back like right then and there. So it is a pretty common problem statement, I would say, from that perspective, not just for Ola, for any other EV player in that market. Not just for, say, EV player in a sense, not just the EV scooters, whoever is doing cars and whatnot, right? So it's a very common problem statement which needs to be addressed. But apart from it, the problem statement doesn't end there. A lot of automation actually goes into the factory as well. I mean, there are tons and tons of videos even in online, and we very recently did Sankal. where we invited all our guests to take a tour in our factory. So all of it, it's been automated with very minimal manual effort, which is required. So in terms of where all these robot goes, picks things, and does in phases. So yeah, it's a challenging one, but yeah.
You must have enjoyed all this, because congratulations to you guys. I mean, you guys have done great job and built great products, and I feel really great to see Indian companies, are building some great tech products, like some SaaS products as well. So really congratulations to you, all of you. I mean, so my next question, Mani, is at an enterprise level, you typically get a lot of traffic, massive user base when you grow, and especially when you are a B2C company.
Sure.
So how do you handle that huge traffic, and how do you make sure that every customer is served? What tech you use at the bank, at the back, and how the tech serves people?
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, I'll probably zoom out a bit, trying to cover. So it's a very common problem statement, right? I mean, the customer base is very huge, and you get a lot of traffic. I mean, the TPS, the transactions per second, or the number of hits which you're going to get is huge, and you can't basically have downtime. I mean, and your traffic is spread across globe. Just to zooming out the problem statement, I'll probably try to cover all the hops where the traffic has to flow through, and the reliability and the scalability part across different components of it. So the first part when a traffic hits, right, is your DNS layer. I mean, it's going to try to resolve whatever, say for example, geeksforgeeks.com. It's going to resolve your DNS, and then comes your CDN layer, and then most likely Akamai or Cloudflare, whatnot, right? So any big who will serve the traffic, especially the static content like images and whatnot, then and there. And then most likely your dynamic content flows through. So flows through. Post that, you typically have your WAF solution, your security-based solution, like say F5. And then it hops into your L4, L7 load balancer. L7, that's where you do a lot of these, say, for example, rate limiting or circuit breaker. All those plugins will be incorporated. Say, for example, IRCTC site, right, where a lot of us will try right at that moment, like say 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. So you want to put a queue around it. You have to safeguard your system, I mean, out of the hood. So that's where your L7 level load balancers kick in. If at all I have to give an example, say Nginx for that matter, which will do the role. And post that, you will have your API gateway. API gateway is again one of the hub which is going to serve your API calls, because now it is all API driven, right? Like event driven. So post that, this is like a common stack, which is being followed across enterprises. And post that, I'm going to dissect the problem into 3 different parts. Say, for example, your stateless application, mostly microservices based. Earlier, it used to be one monolith application, which going to say, for example, an e-commerce traffic, right? Like adding it into a cart, doing your product catalog, listing them out, and whatnot. And again, doing the payment and whatnot. So, but yeah, now it is all broken out into all these different microservices. And then comes your data store databases layer, where the data is at rest. Okay. Say, for example, if I'm doing a transaction, the data eventually gets stored in MySQL DB or Cassandra or Scylla, whatnot, document DB like Mongo. And then, so that's the DB layer. And post that, most of the time, this is what a student will see, right? But eventually, there is one that tail still follows. What it means, right? You're going to get all these events. Say, for example, even from your MySQL or Kafka or Cassandra or whatnot, it gets flashed into your data store. Into your data lake, most likely, say an S3 kind of a solution, right? And then S3 or Azure Blob, any sort of object storage or blob storage, you put it in your data lake, or possibly in your data warehouse. And post that, you have your big data solutions like Hadoop, Presto Spark, which does crunching of all these data. put it into nice format where data-driven decisions can be made both by a business user, or you have a capability where you can facilitate it back to the end customer, or as a, what do you say, stats to your own user. So all of this can be made, right? So this is the complete flow. So then comes the reliability of all these components. Say, for example, my Nginx can't go down, or my microservices or my DB for sure can't go down. And it also has to be scalable. Scalable in a sense, say, based on my traffic. Say, for example, if I'm me being an e-commerce site, if I'm going in for a sale, I have to scale it up based on where the bottleneck will be. Say, my microservices, not all of it, say if I'm hosting like 400, 500 applications on a time, not all of it going to get traffic. So my first tier one applications, which are like right next to my user flow, right, it's going to get traffic, and we sort of like pre-scale it, and you will find a lot of this exercise being followed across industry. I mean, based on their forecast and predictability. There is auto scaling to a certain extent, but all of it won't work. Say, for example, a financial institution, right, or say, for example, Zerodha for that matter. It can't wait, or even for Hotstar for that matter. If a match starts at 7, an IPL match, you will find a lot of people like doing the OTP signing like right then and there around 7 o'clock. So you can't have a system which can, it's going to predict the traffic, I mean, and then scale accordingly. You have to predict it like upfront and then scale it accordingly. Each and every hub has to be scaled up, and it also has to be reliable. Say, for example, if one region, I mean, things go all the time. I mean, if the Googles and Netflix on Earth can go down, of course, every system is bounded to go down. It is like how resilient it can be. I mean, how fast we can, deviate the traffic, starting from, say, throttling and diverting your traffic to your other regions or other sites, for that matter. That's all plays at a bigger scale.
So there are multiple layers that make sure multiple different things are working properly, and
Yes.
then and you talked about an example of Hotstar. So I was just our coding challenges, hiring challenges were coming to my mind when there is a hiring challenge that happens or a jobathon that happens on geeksforgeeks monthly basis. The spike suddenly goes up, and we have to predict it. We know what time it is going to happen, so we actually make sure that we have enough provisioning for that particular event. Great. So now I'll just have a final question from your side, which is for the aspiring people. So if I am an engineering candidate, or if I'm a working professional, and I want to build a career like you, I want to reach that tech management position. What are the things I should do, and what are the things that I shouldn't be doing?
Okay. So from a career perspective, right? I mean, always try to take the road which is less traveled. My own example was like I was trying to do. Of course, I started my career as a Java developer, but at that point in time, in my team, there was no one to handle the build and release engineering. I was like, yeah, chalo, let me handle or learn that problem statement, because at that point in time, it is about Maven. Maven, and you were supposed to write the POM file. It's about, I mean, me being a fresh engineer. I'm talking about 15 years ago. It is like just getting your hands dirty with one other tool or one other language. That's about it, and trying to deploy it and make it work. So, but yeah, that actually shifted my career. I mean, it's about doing a constant learning. I mean, and try to get your internals right. I mean, you have to. It's about constant learning and go as deep as you can and as wide as you can.
I think one thing that you mentioned was very right. I mean, that's a problem in India. If somebody tells you there are one jobs more, so everybody starts preparing for full stack development, and then suddenly something comes up that DSA has to be prepared, so everybody starts preparing DSA and starts solving the problems. So less traveled path is something that works best, even if you want to go for entrepreneurship. I mean, don't do something that everybody else is doing, right? So that is, and constant learning, obviously. I mean, if you are in tech, even at your stage, you will have to learn. It never stops, right?
Never stops. Yeah. Still, I do my internals from time to time, so you can't get away with it. data structure and algo, and as well as your internals of distributed system, it can't go away that easily. So, say even at this point in time, right, the way we develop and way we operate, right, I mean, where we productionize it, it has moved. Say, for example, currently we use Copilot and ChatGPT to get the code, but that is just the code generation part. But in terms of like fitting it, whatever the code which is being generated, right, you have to again fine tune, try to understand at the end of the day, and you are supposed to fit in with the existing large millions of lines of code. It has to fit in, and that too with perfection, addressing all your edge cases. And top of it, my operations also has changed in terms of earlier, I used to take those executables and try to put it in my, say, server like middleware, like JBoss or whatnot. Now that has changed into like, say, GitOps and whatnot. So there is a constant evolution, but you have to stay relevant.
All right. So here I have a related question.
Sure.
So if I am building a tech startup, this is what a mistake we did as a company. We built something in PHP initially, then we had to revamp it, and then we had to change every line of code, and a lot of cost and resources went into revamping the whole software, and that happens in tech. And also, if I talk about building a perfect system in the beginning, so Y Combinator's founder said, you don't have, which went very popular and very viral in terms of entrepreneurship. Don't think about scale. Think about serving the customer, even if you have to do it in Excel and all. So still, what are the do's and don'ts from your side? If I'm building a tech product, what are the things that I should be avoiding when I'm building a startup or a tech company? And what are the things that I should be doing so that I can minimize the cost at a later stage or minimize the revamping and all?
I would say always have a vision in terms of, in terms of currently I'm trying to address this problem statement, and always have the option A and B in terms of if my volume grows at this point, whatever the solution which I'm currently having it, can it be scaled? You don't have to address, all the corner cases and edge cases, but if whatever the framework or the solution which you're proposing should have that capability where it can be blown out. So that is one thing which people find it. If you see a established enterprise, there is always tech debt because of it. Because whatever the solution which was being kept in the production system, it becomes very tricky because there will be tons and tons of rationale which would have thought at that point in time, which the reason why that particular solution is still in production. But to rewrite or re-architect that particular system alone, it becomes very tricky, and that's the reason where we will find a lot of these tech debts. But it's always have that rationale and try to socialize it and at least document it, because most of the time whoever is trying to put that system as an industry, people juggle back and forth. So it becomes very, very tricky. Right?
Documentation is super important. Because people switch companies, they switch teams, and then somebody and you yourself forget after some time what was the reason why I built that feature.
There are a lot of solutions these days where you can document it as part of your code base and whatnot, then you get as a README file or put it in Confluence. But yeah, at least the biggest rationale which you think why a particular component has been designed in such or so and so reason, just document it. That will certainly help in longer run.
Sure. So great. And I'll ask you one more question.
Sure, please.
And this question is like, if I am a tech person, that's the most common problem that engineers have, freshers have particularly. How do I get my first job? How do I prepare to get into placed in product-based companies or Indian startups? What are the things that I should do right?
Okay, so I would say it's a repetitive answer, but still it is relevant. All your TS and algo and the analytical skill, which a lot of these product companies it still is relevant and it still stays the same. But apart from it, what a candidate, how it's going to say make a candidate trying to stand them out from the regular crowd is your exposure towards it. As we touched base in our previous question, try to try to practice it out, not just by reading it out, or try to understand the internals, and as well as try to experiment with it. So when you try to experiment, you try to learn a lot in terms of, like, because we are talking about distributed systems, right, where it'll be like deployed in scale, like in hundreds of and thousands of servers, and each server will talk with each other, gossiping, or yeah, that's a famous protocol to use. Each server will talk with each other, and it's going to make sure that as a thing is all followed. So there are like lots and lots of thought process which goes into it. Try to get the internals, and as well as try to experiment it. You don't have to do all the use cases like then and there. But yeah, try to get your internals, your architecture, your use cases, how it's being used at an industry standpoint, and as well as the incidents or the outages which caused because of this, because of a particular system. So those are all the major learnings, and I would say that's a great way to get started with respect, not just for a fresh student coming right off the college, but even for an experienced professional.
All right. So for fresh candidate, data structures, analytics skills, and the fundamentals are
Yes.
very important. But for a slightly working professional, it's very important to make things how to make sure that your code is written in a good way. It allows multiple servers to communicate. It allows basically scalability, and you understand the business also. That those are important things that are required.
True. Yeah, because those rounds still are relevant. I mean, we feel should we change it when there was a healthy discussion with the team. All those rounds still stay the same in terms of, okay, there should be a DSN algo, there should be a programming round, there should be a system design round, and post that, if it is a dev role or it's a platform engineer role, it's going to change in terms of, okay, what about the systems and the kernels and whatnot? How is the understanding of the Linux networking? So all that will still stay the same, and it's still considered as very relevant. Apart from it, obviously, if the candidate has pretty good exposure on new age tech, like say blockchain or AI, ML ops, whatnot, it's going to add a lot of value. Again, it's based on the team which they're going to work for.
All right. Thank you, Mani. It was wonderful talking to you. And I think
Pleasure is mine.
audience must have learned a lot from your experience. And I think people like you should be, I'm trying my best to bring people like you to the students so that they understand what actually happens in the industry and they can learn from your vast experience. So thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Great talking
Thank
to
you. The pleasure is mine. It was a pleasure talking with you, and please do keep up the great work which you are doing. And again, thanks a lot for what you have done for the entire student community and as well as for the industry, because we still use Geek for Geeks. It's been at least 15 years by now.
Right.
So it still is very relevant, and even when from time to time, to keep myself updated, I always go back to the basics, right? So it certainly helps. Thanks for it.
Thank you, man.
Sure.
So guys, I think you must have learned a lot from this video. Please do like and subscribe to the channel and keep visiting us.